Hi, it's Sam. In today's video, we're going to look at using pattr. Now, using pattr, we can access the objects that are in subpatchers or bpatchers or just in the same level of the patch you're working in. And what's really useful about it is you can control them remotely, and you can also create presets, which are like snapshots of the current values for the different objects in your patch. So I'm going to show you how to use some of the different objects that are part of the pattr system. The first thing I want to do is create a couple bpatchers that we will control from the main patch. So the first one will be pretty simple. We're just going to create a few live dials. Let's create 3 of them. And just for the purpose of differentiating them, let's make one tiny. One will be just default. The other will make it large. And we need to also put these in presentation because we're going to want to put this bpatcher, let's make it open in presentation mode, go to the inspector. If you don't know, just click anywhere in the patch, and then with nothing selected, click on the patcher inspector, this diamond here, and go down to open in presentation. Let's turn that on. So now we have the live dial, tiny and regular and large, and we're going to give these scripting names because that's going to allow us to refer to them from the main patch. So I'm going to just call this one tiny dial, and I'm just going to give it the same short name so we can view the name as well easily. And then I'll just call this one dial, and I will call this one large dial. And let's also set these up a little bit differently, like let's make tiny dial go from 0 to 1 and change the unit style to float. Dial we can just leave as is. Large dial, let's change this to let's keep it as a percentage from 0 to 100. And that's just so that we can try out different values, different ranges, different units, and make sure everything's working correctly. So we also want to add an autopattr object. So this is going to automatically add to the pattr system any object that has a scripting name. And so these all have scripting names, so they're going to be added to pattr. And we also want to add a pattrmarker. And what this will allow us to do, once I give it a name, I'm going to call this dials bpatcher. And what this will allow us to do is, using the pattr system, we can get the different attributes, or in this case, I guess the different objects that are in this bpatcher. Now, lastly, I want to set up a way for us to automatically update the list of the bpatchers from our main patch. So what I'm going to do is add a load bang. And then I'm also going to send that to qlim so that we can make sure that this happens at the very end after everything else has been loaded. And then I'm going to have a send. I'm just going to call this update patchers. So now when we load a bpatcher, this bpatcher, we can use this to update the list of bpatchers and the objects. But we can also use a close bang to do the same so that we can get rid of the record of this. And this will make more sense when we look at the full patch. Make sure the presentation mode, this is fine. Doesn't need to be anything fancy. I'm sure that'll be okay. And let's just save it. And I'll give it a name like dials bpatcher. Okay. And I want to make another bpatcher so that we can be able to switch between different bpatchers that we are controlling. So let's just close this patch and open a new one. And this is going to be pretty similar, just going to use some different objects. So in this bpatcher, let's add a slider and live.text. So live.slider, live.text, and let's do live.menu. And this will also be useful because we can try some different objects that are different from dials. So let's add these all to presentation, and let's give them some names. A slider, we can just call this slider, and I'll just leave this as is otherwise. And then same with the live.text, I'll call this text toggle. And let me just add a little comment so that we know what this is. Same thing with the menu. We're just going to call this menu. Okay. So now, again, the important part is that the scripting name has to be set. So if the scripting name is set for the slider and the text toggle and the menu, then we should be all set to use it in pattr. And so just like the other bpatcher, let's add an autopattr. And pattrmarker, I'll call this one bpatcher 2 because I'm not very creative. And again, we're going to want to have that send to update this. And I think I called it update patchers, but I'll have to make sure that's right. And then the same thing, we're going to add the load bang with qlim, as well as close bang. And we also want to make sure that this opens in presentation mode. And just do a little bit of an adjustment here. And let's just save this now. So I'll call this bpatcher 2. So now we can actually set up the main patch. Let's close this and open up a fresh patch. Okay, let's add the bpatchers first. And a couple things. You want to make sure first that it's in the search path. The bpatcher files are in the search path of Max. So here's dials bpatcher. And you also want to make sure that you have it set to open to presentation mode and that you arrange the dials so that they're in the very top corner. Otherwise, you're going to have to extend the bpatcher window to be very large so that you can see them. Okay, so we have the first bpatcher here, and let's add this to presentation. And let's give this a scripting name that we can refer to it by. I'll just call it, well, I guess by default it actually has the name of the patcher, which is dials_bpatcher. So I'll just keep that as it is. And then the other bpatcher was bpatcher 2. Okay, so now we also have that. So now we want to access the different objects that are in these bpatchers and be able to control them remotely. And we can get the name of the different pattr markers, which we already had saved in these patches, by using the pattrmarker object. But we want to also set the attribute invisible to 1 because we don't want to include this pattrmarker in the list of the pattrmarkers. And we just use the message getMarkerList to get the list of the markers. So let's see what that outputs when we just print to the console. So when we print the getMarkerList, we see marker_list followed by dials underscore bpatcher and bpatcher underscore 2, which are the two bpatchers we have in this patch. And it's just using the name of the pattr markers that we put in these bpatchers and printing those out. So we can pass these on now to a menu that can list the different subpatchers that we have access to. So to do this, we're just going to add a umenu. And we're going to start off every time we update. Let's have a bang. This will be our update. Every time we update this list, we are going to first want to clear the existing list of bpatchers or subpatchers or whatever we're using. Then we're going to want to get the marker list. And we need to root out the message marker list. And then we can iterate through each of the patchers and then append them to the menu. So that's where we're going to start. This bang is going to be important for the next step, which will be to retrieve the names of the objects within the currently selected patcher. But now when we hit the update, we'll see that we have the two patchers now showing up here. So the next step is to retrieve the name of the objects that we can control within those patchers. And to do that, we're going to use the pattrhub object, which description says access all pattr objects in a patcher. So what pattrhub takes is the name of a patcher, which comes after the message patcher, and it uses that to let you query information about that patch. So we're going to bang out the currently selected patch and send that to pattrhub. But we'll need to use 3 additional bangs after that. So let's just make the trigger now. So the first step is to bind pattrhub to the selected patch. Next, we want to, similarly to the first step, clear the menu that's going to list all of the objects that are available in that subpatcher. Then we're going to send the get attributes message to pattrhub. And that's what gives us the list of scripting names of the objects that we can control. And then finally, like before, we're going to want to bang out the currently selected object. So what comes out of pattrhub is going to be the word attributes followed by the attributes. So we're just following the same process here. We're going to iterate through each of them and append them to the menu. So now when I select the bpatcher, this is being sent to pattrhub, and it's not finding this. And why is that? It's because I think the dials bpatcher, I have an uppercase D in dials. So let me change scripting name to reflect that and see if that fixes it. Yeah, that's what the issue was. So maybe I should either change the name of the patcher file so that it's uppercase D, or otherwise change the pattrmarker. They should probably match so I don't get confused later. But now it's showing I have got the dial, the large dial, and the tiny dial. So now this is being populated correctly. Same thing with the bpatcher 2, being populated correctly with the objects that are available in those. Now the final step is to take, well, actually let's add these to presentation mode too, so that we can kind of clean this up later. It'll be a little bit easier to follow. And now we can control, we want to be able to control whatever this object is remotely. And there are different ways of doing this, but I think one good way, or maybe interesting way to do it, is to use the pattr objects. And so this is going to need a name. We'll just call this control. And I want to make this invisible because I don't want to save, oops, not initial. I don't want this to be visible to pattrstorage. So let's just make that invisible. I don't want this value to be saved. This is only for controlling the different objects. It's not meant to be used to save the value. So what pattr is looking for is the name of this object. However, if I just gave it the name dial, it wouldn't know what that is because pattr is looking only on the top level of the patch. And so the way that we find the path to dial would be the syntax like this. It'll be like subpatcher name : object scripting name. So we're going to need to format the message to pattr, which is looking for the message bind to. So we're trying to bind pattr to a certain patch. And to do this, we're going to use another set of triggers. So we're going to get the name of the object we want to control, so dial. And we're going to use sprintf, and we want to send out a symbol. So we're going to say symout. And we want there to be a string, so it'll be %s, then 2 colons, then another string, so %s. And so the object scripting name is dial, so we're going to put that in the right cold inlet. And then we need to get the current patcher name. And what I decided to do for this, because I don't want it to be sent out immediately, is to just save that in a ZL reg. And then bang it out when I'm ready for it at this step in the code. And then finally, that'll go and bind to pattr. And then I send a bang to update the current value of whatever that object is. And we can just use a float box and connect the output of pattr to the input and the input of pattr to the output. Now, typically this would be discouraged to have this kind of feedback loop, but it actually works quite well in this case because we are unable to go past the bounds of whatever the range is of the object we're controlling. And that'll make more sense when I demonstrate that. And the other thing is that we should take our send or update patchers. Well, that should be a receive actually. And now if I remove something, it should hopefully get rid of it. So right now, like dials bpatcher, if I delete that, uh-oh, that didn't work. I see that this should have been updated. So what I'm gonna do is let me try using qlim here as well. And now try, and that seems to now be responding. Okay. So putting qlim after the update patchers seems to have helped with that. So now if you remove one of the bpatchers, it'll update. If you add it, it should also update it. Let's also add in pattrstorage. And I'll just call this pattrtorage. And we can also use the preset object and make sure that under pattrstorage we give the same name. So let me just copy this. The other thing I wanted to mention is that another form of this syntax is if you're working in a subpatcher and you want to control something in the parent, you can do something like this. You use the term parent, and then you do the scripting name of whatever's in the parent. So you don't have to use the name of the parent, you just use the word parent, and then the scripting name for whatever that object is that you want to control. And that way you can control objects in the parent from a subpatch or a bpatcher. And the other pattr object that I haven't shown yet is pattrforward, which sends any message to a named object. And so what you can do with this is use the send message, and then I can do something like what is it? Dials bpatcher, and then dial. I think I need to put this all in quotes. Or not, actually, because it's all one string. Okay. So now, if I hit send, if I click on the message, I should be able to control that dial now. And I am. And then if I just send the message send without any object, then it should now not be connected to anything. Okay. So that's another pattr object to know about that I'm not really using for this implementation, but just to be aware of it. I think that's all we need. So if I arrange presentation, and let's also bring in the pattrStorage. Now I should be able to select, yeah, see now the dial's being reflected, the current values being reflected when I select it. So large dial 0, tiny dial 0. And now actually I cannot, like I mentioned earlier, I can't go above or below the range. If I try to drag, it's not going to let me do that, which is kind of nice. So I can select a value, set a value, switch to the bpatcher. And I wanted to show here too, for the menu, this is going to go between 0, 1, and 2. Selecting the index of the object I want to select there, or the message, I should say. For text toggle, it just goes between 0 and 1. And then the slider just works as you would expect. And of course, I can still control them regularly as well. So if I want to save this, I can just hit Shift and then click. And then I can make some other adjustments. Save that. You see now I've got these saved. Now if I go to save this, let me just save this as pattr universe. Now if I try to close it, it might prompt me to save a JSON file for pattrStorage, which is fine. You can just go ahead and save that. So then that will be what allows this patch to reload the presets is through that file. So just be aware of that. Let me actually try that now. And yeah, so it does prompt me to save the storage JSON file for that. So just be aware of that. That's fine. That's as expected. So that should cover everything that I wanted to look at with pattr today. We saw that using a combination of autopattr and pattrmarker in the bpatchers lets us then use pattrmarker to get the name of the subpatchers, and then pattrhub to get the name of the different objects that we want to be able to control. And then we use pattr to be able to remotely control them. And then pattrStorage to save snapshots of their values. So I hope you found that useful in kind of demystifying using pattr. Let me know if you have any questions or further clarifications. Otherwise, until next time, class is dismissed.